Tokyo Mirage Sessions Sharp FE bills itself as a loving cross between Atlus's Shin Megami Tensei series and Nintendo's Fire Emblem franchise. Though in actuality it plays more like the Shin Megami Tensei game, borrowing aspects of the Persona franchises primarily, but removing the ability to summon personalities based off of mythological gods and monsters and replacing them with various members of the Fire Emblem cast. This makes the game feel less of a full-on mashup between the two games and more of a Shin Megami Tensei game with hints of Fire Emblem influence. The game takes place in modern-day Tokyo as you lead a group of young teens to fight against a group of monsters called Mirages to prevent these creatures from stealing Performa, the physical embodiment of artistic ability that every person has inside of them. Why these creatures require this essence isn't made clear immediately, though their evil intent becomes apparent to our protagonists and they decide to band together to fight against them. All members of the main cast have high concentration of Performa and have managed to pair up with various Mirages, all of whom represented by main characters of the Fire Emblem franchise, to fight against this threat. As they progress through the story, it becomes apparent that things aren't as simple as they seem. Many of the Mirages who fight alongside our heroes reveal that they cannot remember their past and are not sure why they're trying to gather energy from human beings in the first place. For the most part, the story is par for the course. You won't find too much here that you haven't seen in earlier Shin Megami Tensei games, or earlier JRPGs in general. That being said, the story is passable, and the characters are generally likable enough that it will keep your interest from beginning to end. The only complaint with the game's story is that it suffers from a been there, done that vibe, as the story itself is nothing remarkable, and the characters themselves feel more like caricatures than individuals. You will spend the majority of the game wheel in various dungeons that the game throws at you as you progress through its story. Each dungeon looks varied enough and separates itself visually from the others as you continue through the game, though some of them require a significant amount of backtracking, which can become tedious. As you progress trying to solve the various puzzles that the dungeon offers, you will run into various Mirages that will attack you on sight. If you manage to strike them down before they reach you, you will have the upper hand in the following battle. Actually fighting against enemies is where the game truly shines, as combat is stylish and fun. Every enemy you come across as you go through the game will have their own strengths and weaknesses. Hitting an enemy with their weakness can cause another member of your team to initiate a follow-up attack, stacking up damage quickly. Eventually, you will meet the Fire Emblem mainstay. Tiki, who is the game's equivalent of a Vocaloid, has the ability to upgrade character weapons as well as strengthen the bond between the main characters and their Mirage companions. Upgrading your weapons and Mirages will be crucial in later parts of the game, where having increased power and utility will be useful against the stronger enemies you will come across. The graphical quality of the game is quite good, with its bright anime vibe being visually pleasing. This has been reflected not only in the individual characters, but also in translating Shibuya, a real-world shopping district and entertainment center in Tokyo, into the game world. Characters who are important to the story, or at least interactable, have their own models while the other characters are filled in solid color, allowing for more important characters to pop out. When you first pick up the game, you may not notice that there are no English vocals for the game. You can only play the game with the Japanese voice cast. This isn't really a problem when dealing with the majority of story segments of the game, and the game is still fairly enjoyable without English dialogue. Before this game even came out, there has been a significant amount of controversy revolving around the censorship the game received for its Western release. Some of these things are minor, such as one of the characters' panties being blocked by shadow, and certain characters' clothing altered to be less revealing. But then there are more extreme changes, like story segment pieces of downloadable content being completely omitted and unavailable for purchase. It's understandable that certain aspects of the game were changed, as all media is changed in some way when translated for different regions. However, the censorship in this game is odd and contradictory. Most of its focus surrounds the removal of sexually explicit content. But even this censorship is inconsistent, with certain characters' outfits being altered to be more appropriate, while others remain virtually unchanged. There was even a moment where an enemy's cleavage was covered up in an animated segment, but back out in the open when it was time for regular gameplay. It's not a huge deal to the grand scheme of things, but the removal of content was significant enough where it was worth mentioning. Tokyo Mirage Sessions is a good JRPG for a gaming console that is severely lacking in games of the genre. While there are certain aspects that keep it from reaching the heights of greatness, it is a fun romp through a fictional Tokyo, and will probably keep Shin Megami Tensei fans occupied until Persona 5 comes out next year.